Good morning, everyone. Tonight is the holiday of Shavuot, so I want to share with you a Torah message related to the holiday of Shavuot. I'm sharing with you the talk of the Rebbe that's printed in Likutei Sichos, volume 33, the second talk for Shavuot. The Gemara in Tractate Kritut tells us that our forefathers, meaning the Jewish people standing by Mount Sinai, Erev Shavuot, they enter into a covenant, bris is a covenant, not circumcision, bris, with three things. Bemila, circumcision, they needed to be circumcised. Tvilah, dunking themselves in a mikveh, in a source of life water. And artzoas dam, and sprinkling of blood, meaning a sacrifice. They needed to have a sacrifice to bring as part of the conversion. They needed to be circumcised, the male, and they needed to go to the mikveh. So these are three prerequisites that all human beings, whenever they want to convert, we learn from the time of the first covenant between the Jewish people and God, that those three must be made. And in fact, today, when someone converts, we tell them, the Bet Din tells them that it is a complete conversion on condition that when the temple will be rebuilt and sacrifices are brought, they will have to bring a sacrifice for converting. Mila, circumcision, it says in the Torah, Ki mulim ayu kol ha'am hayotzim. The Jewish people, all of them had to be, when they left Egypt, they had to be circumcised. In other words, before God will give them the Torah, they had to be circumcised. Sprinkling of the blood on the altar, a sacrifice, we read in Mishpatim, right after the Ten Commandments, Va'ishlach et snarei bnei Yisrael, and they brought in, he sent the young men of Israel. At the time there were no Kohanim, who was the firstborn. He sent the young ones, the chosen ones, to bring sacrifices. It says that they brought sacrifices to God.
Didn't they have Priscilla in Egypt?
Right, that's what, but
Before they left,
there was a prerequisite to live in Egypt, but also to receive in the Torah. That's what the Gemara says. The third one, which is dunking in a mikveh, where do you see it? It says that Moshe, after the giving of the Torah, it says, Va'izrok Moshe min Adam al ha'am. It sprinkled some of the blood on the Jewish men and the people and the nation. There is a rule that there is no sprinkling of a human being unless they went to a mikveh. It's a general rule in all the sacrifices and all procedures. So therefore we learn that someone who wants to convert, what are the three things they must have?
Yes.
Being circumcised. Number two, dunking in a mikveh. And the third is sprinkling of sacrifice, bringing a sacrifice. Okay?
So today, when a person converts, what does it have? Where does it
So I shared with you, even if they are circumcised, we do a tofas dam, we let blood in lieu of circumcision for the sake of serving God, the commandment of God. So they must be circumcised. The second one is going to a mikveh. And the third one, the Bet Din tells the convert that this conversion is done without circumcision because there is no temple. But as soon as there is a temple, they will have to bring it. So these are the three. We learn it from the giving of the Torah. The Mechilta brings a dispute. When did it all happen? When did they go to the mikveh? When did they bring sacrifices? The circumcision already was done in Egypt, as Harry mentioned. The Torah says, "Ki nimol kol ha'am," the people already circumcised. But there was sacrifices, and there was going to the mikveh. When was it done? According to all, the Torah was given when? On Shabbat. There is a dispute what day of the month, but we accept that it was on the 6th. Like now we celebrate, today is the 5th, tomorrow is the 6th. But what day of the week? According to the vast majority, the Shabbat nitna Torah. Now, says the Rebbe, according to Tanya, the story that appears in Mishpatim after the giving of the Torah is actually written later, but was done before. When was it done? Tanakama says, in the 5th of Sivan, they built an altar, they brought sacrifices, they went to mikveh, and the 6th of Sivan, God came down and made the covenant.
So it's part of the Shlosh Ma'agbalah?
Was it? Yes, it's the day before. It's even later than the Shlosh. Shlosh Ma'agbalah started in the 4th.
Right.
According to Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, it was done at the same day. The day God gave us the Torah is the day they went to a mikveh and they brought sacrifices. As the Rebbe, according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, that it was done on the day God gave us the Torah, which was Shabbat. How is it possible to convert a person on Shabbat? If you told me that it happened before, a day earlier, it happened on Friday. On Friday. It's a holiday, but it became a holiday after God gave the Torah. So maybe then you wouldn't do it in the future. But at the time, at the time of the giving of Torah, it was Shabbat. If it was Shabbat, they're not allowed to convert on Shabbat.
No, that's correct me if I'm wrong, Rabbi. They were all sleeping, and Moshe had to wake them up for the
Right. What does that have to do with getting converted?
Have to do anything. They have to rush out there.
No, he according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, he woke them up, and he says, time to make a covenant. All stay in line, go to the mikveh, all go to bring a sacrifice, and then come down to the foot of Mount Sinai.
600,000 people.
Yes. All that happened.
Yeah.
They had 1,000 mikvahs. They had a big river, a huge river. I don't see the problem. At the time there was no temple. They do sacrifices in their backyard.
Okay, but there was this desert. Where's the water coming from?
Okay, so it's a good question. Moshe did how did they have water in the desert? Each leader of a tribe with his staff did, so there was plenty of water.
But I thought that there were no circumcisions, in the desert. Because when
The circumcision was done before they left Egypt.
they said,
I just already discussed that with Harry.
okay, so circumcision was done.
Again, the Gemara says, in order for the Jewish people to receive the Torah and make a covenant with God, there were 3 conditions. 1, circumcision. How do we know? Because it says that all the people were circumcised. When did they actually circumcise? Before they left Egypt, 2 months earlier. The second is bringing sacrifices. The third is a mikveh. Now, according to Tanakama, that all that was done on the 5th of Sivan, the day before the giving of the Torah, it was on a Friday. A Friday was a weekday. Because before God gave the 10 Commandments, it was on a holiday. So it could have. According to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, I want to make sure that that's his name, and Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, it was done the same day, if that day was Shabbat, because everybody agrees that God gave the Torah on Shabbat. Shabbat was already given to them in Marah, another few stops earlier. In other words, they were commanded to keep Shabbat earlier. If they were commanded to keep Shabbat earlier, how can they go to a mikveh and do conversion on the Shabbat? Says the Rebbe, the Rambam and Shulchan Aruch Code of Law says that we cannot convert someone on Shabbat for 2 reasons. One is conversion completes the human being, makes them a perfect human being, and you're not allowed to complete something on Shabbat. The second reason, you're not allowed to form a bet din on Shabbat. And in order for someone to convert, you need a bet din. Okay? Says the Rebbe, there is an opinion that circumcision is not done on Shabbat for a convert, for example, because it completes the person, and there is a Torah prohibition against completing anything, and therefore it's forbidden. So how are they able to do it on Shabbat? And the Shabbat was given to them earlier than the 10 Commandments.
But certain is allowed for Jewish child, is allowed on Shabbat.
Because God says do it on time, on the 8th day. But if you pushed it off, the baby was not ready, you do not, no, you do it as soon as he's ready, but Shabbat is not one of the days. I had, my brother had a grandson 2 weeks ago. the baby was jaundiced. They waited about 10 days, and the following Tuesday they did it. It was the day they were comfortable. Everybody was able to make it from around the country. But you don't do it on Shabbat unless it's the 8th day. 8th day pushes Shabbat, even though it's a labor. All right, let's continue on our discussion. Says the Rebbe, so you understand the question, right? If it's on Shabbat, how can they do it then? Says the Rebbe, the explanation is, when the Torah tells us, when the Gemara tells us that there were 3 conditions done before they received the Torah, why isn't there a condition of acceptance of the mitzvot? After all, someone who converts needs to accept upon themselves the yoke of God, to accept it, to follow the mitzvot. Rambam writes that you must share with the potential convert the most difficult mitzvot and the lightest, the most easiest mitzvot, and they need to be aware of them. No one can convert and reject part of the mitzvot, otherwise they're not converting. It's not part of the contract. How come nothing is there about accepting the mitzvot? Only about circumcision, mikveh, and a sacrifice. Says the Rebbe, it must be that the acceptance of the mitzvot is not a condition. It is the very idea of conversion. Why does someone wants to convert? Because they want to serve God with the Torah and mitzvot. And the Rebbe says that only after someone accepts upon themselves the mitzvot, then we tell them there are 3 conditions that must be met. But if someone did not accept the mitzvot, there is no conversion to begin with. Did you understand that? So therefore there is a major distinction between circumcision, sacrifice, and mikveh versus acceptance of the mitzvot. The acceptance of the mitzvot is the essence, is the backbone, so to say, of what conversion is. If someone is conditional, we say to them there is no conversion to begin with. All the other 3 are conditions for the conversion to succeed. But if there is no mitzvah, there is no conversion to begin with. These are the words of Rambam and the Torah. Therefore, there is no conversion if there is no mitzvot. Therefore, based on that, and the Rebbe says that the Rambam writes that after one accepts the mitzvot and the yoke of Torah, they must follow the 3 conditions. In other words, the Kabbalat mitzvot, the acceptance of the serve God with the commandments, is not one of the conditions. It is the very transaction that takes place. Based on that, this is going to be the basis of the answer. Based on that, says the Rebbe, there must be a major distinction between the first conversion, when the Jewish people stood by Mount Sinai, and the rest. Because at the time there was no mitzvot. All the mitzvot given before, says the Rebbe, were on a whole different level, as we'll see in a moment. But the real mitzvot was given when God came down on Mount Sinai. Therefore, prior to that, there is no need to accept, the conversion is going to take place when God will come down and give them the mitzvot. And up to that point, the Shabbat was not a mitzvah, was given to them. Although Moshe ordered them to follow, but the idea of converting and making a covenant and connecting to God forever, which will affect the rest of history for that person and descendants, was done at the time when they accepted it. But the Kabbalat mitzvot, they're looking forward to receive the commandments, the covenant from God. After the Torah was given, we tell someone, if you want to serve God and keep the Torah, then you have to accept 3 conditions. But before, the first time when it happened, there was no mitzvah to accept. They were willing to come into the chuppah. They were willing to come into that moment in time to make a covenant with God by listening to the commandments. And therefore, there was no mitzvot given to them prior. If there was no mitzvot given to them prior, according to Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda, at that day, God asked them to make a sacrifice and to go to the mikveh, because circumcision was done before. Says the Rebbe, that's why the Medrash tells us that on the time of Mount Sinai, until that point, the upper beings had to stay up, the lower beings had to stay down, no mixing. But God says when he gives the Torah, he's going to mix higher and lower beings together, and I'm the first one to start. And God came down. Ask the Rebbe, I don't understand. Angels came before, the forefathers became spiritual by serving God. There was situations recorded in the Torah where elevated spiritual beings came down and lower physical material human beings elevated, but it was a whole different plane. This was, so to say, a preparation, just like the difference between the act of a child versus an adult. Once God gave the Torah, now it's a whole different ballgame, because when the spiritual will come down, they can change the physical. When a physical is elevated to higher, they can change the spiritual forever. It's a whole different relationship. And it happens only when God came down on Mount Sinai. So even though our forefather kept the entire Torah, we know we keep the Torah today. Every mitzvah we keep must be given on Mount Sinai and after. Nothing from before. So why do we circumcise? Not because Abraham had a covenant and God told him to do it, but because Moshe told the Jewish people after the giving of the Torah. Why do we sanctify the months? Why do we honor our parents, even though those mitzvot were recorded in the Torah prior to Mount Sinai? They have to be written in the Torah afterwards, and only then you keep them. In other words, the actual relationship between God and a Jew was established when God came down on Mount Sinai and gave us the mitzvot. So again, mitzvot is not a condition in conversion. Mitzvot is the very essence of what conversion is about. However, at the time of the giving of the Torah, there was no mitzvot. They were willing, looking forward to that interaction. And therefore, even though it was Shabbat, they were allowed to go to the mikveh. They were allowed to bring sacrifices, and they were allowed to have a beit din formed to convert them. Afterwards, keeping the commandments is not a condition, because that's the very reason. And on Shabbat, you don't bring a sacrifice. You also do not go to the mikveh, and you're not allowed to be converting someone, because now God gave us a commandment. And if you want to keep the commandments, you cannot, the very act of conversion, violate that same commandment.
So you say able to do these three things on Shabbat because they have not received the Torah.
According to Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Yehuda, they did it on that day. It was Shabbat, and Shabbat was given to them before in Marah. Says the Rebbe, it must be that the Shabbat was given to them then was on a whole different plane, and now they are coming into a covenant with God. How does a covenant being established? By serving God. That serving of God happened after God gives the commandments, and that happened when God came down Mount Sinai. Therefore, in the morning they could have. According to Tanya, the first opinion was done on the 5th of Sivan. The sacrifice and the mikveh was done earlier, a day earlier. But according to Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi, and the Rebbe says that even according to the Mechilta itself follows Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Yehuda. There is another explanation. Mechilta itself says that it happened on Friday, not on Shabbat. But the majority of opinions is that it happened on Shabbat. The giving of Torah, Mechilta itself, happened on Friday.
So we go.
But the giving of the Torah, but the Medrash Lekach Tov and the Gemara, anywhere in the Gemara says that it happened on Shabbat. And therefore, we needed to explain, as the Rebbe explained that. What's the question?
So you can't argue the fact that they did it on the 5th and on the 6th. Supposing they always did on the 5th.
So we have two opinions.
So
One of Tana Kama that it happened on the 5th.
So who do you go after?
Who do you go after? I don't know. Allah. It's a machloikas, yes. How did it happen that they have an argument about what really happened? I don't know.
The Jews.
I'm sure there is ways to explain it, but the Rebbe explained that both opinions will be able to explain that it happened and it would happen correctly, because it doesn't make sense that they did something that was incorrect on the day they are for the purpose of converting them towards. But this is a very, very important lesson for us about conversion, and it's an important lesson to us why Shavuot is such a major holiday, because it marks the birth of the Jewish people. Spiritually, that the day we were created. Up to that point, we were serving God, God cared, but we were a family, not a nation, no covenant with God. Now we came into a covenant, and there is no way going back.
Sure.
Happy Shavuot, everybody.